Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What would you say if I told you there's a book that can teach you how to win The Bachelor?
What would you say if I told you producers caught multiple finalists reading that book in this season that's currently airing?
What would you say if I told you the producers don't want anyone to know that their show has been compromised?
How do we know all this? We wrote that book.
I'm Lizzie Pace.
And I'm Chad Kulchin.
We're the authors of How to Win the Bachelor and the hosts of the Game of Roses podcast, a bi-weekly podcast where we break down all the biggest plays, errors, and MVPs in the game of reality television.
Listen to Game of Roses wherever you get your podcasts and go to howtowinthebachelor.com to get our book.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hi, I'm Dave, and this is my wife, Cathy.
Hello.
And this is the Cinemile podcast where we walk home from the movies, and we have completed another year. 100% finished.
Of walking home from the movies.
Well, no, it's not at the 31st yet.
It's the 27th.
So, it is the 27th. We're out for a nice family walk in the park. And by family walk, I mean we're walking and Oscar is asleep in his buggy.
Yes. And this is our favourite episode of the year. We love this episode. It's the one that takes the most work, but is the most amount of fun. And we
strap in. We're going to talk a lot.
We're going to talk a lot. We're going to talk about our best movies of the year, our worst movies of the year. We're going to talk about honourable mentions, second chance reviews, most surprising, most disappointing, guilty pleasures, and all those movies we missed that we should have seen.
Yeah, and you're also going to hear from some of our guests of Christmas past and some of our lovely Patreon subscribers.
Yeah. So lots of recommendations in this.
Also, quick heads up, no spoilers for any movies.
No spoilers for any.
In this, so
we got loads of movies to chat through.
Right, so you go first. What's your number 5?
My number 5 of the year, as ever, these movies are not shared, so I don't know what Dave has. Dave doesn't know what I have. But before I wanted to get to my number 5, I did want to say thanks to everyone who supported us this year, because we've had such a fun year on the podcast. We've had some amazing guests. We launched our Patreon, which we've loved doing, and we got to do our first ever live show at Latitude Festival, which was like absolute highlight of the year for me, with a wonderful guest, Asif Kapadia. And I think I love our podcast. I love it every year, and thank you everyone for listening and supporting us, because we hugely appreciate it.
Yes, I echo that. We love you guys. I love that you love listening to this thing.
Well, we hope that they love listening to it.
Well, if you stuck it this far, you must like it.
Right, okay, on to my number 5.
Right, shut up, Dave, is what that means.
My number 5 is Can You Ever Forgive Me? Which is a movie we saw much earlier this year with one of our wonderful guests, Craig Parkinson of the Two Shot podcast. And it's a movie that I loved watching, and it's a movie that I really enjoyed, and it's a movie I thought about a lot afterwards. And primarily the reason it's my 5th movie of the year is because my absolute favourite kind of movie is a movie that's character driven and that's really well acted and that has a small story, right? That sums up a movie that I would love. And with these lists, it's not necessarily that I'm saying these are the 5 best made movies this year. It's that these are my favourite movies this year.
Yeah.
And that's, always worth a caveat. So when we're talking about the worst movies of the year, we're not necessarily saying they're very poorly made. We're just saying that we really didn't enjoy them.
But also, sorry, that's what every list is.
Well,
by the way,
but
because
I'm just saying we're not making claims on quality here.
I agree, but I think this is the problem with lists in general. People just end up saying, "Well, how could that be number 4 over number 5?" It's like,
so there's a heavy
these are
caveat.
my choices.
These are my choice. It was directed by Marielle Heller, who did Diary of a Teenage Girl, which is another movie I loved. And she's directed the upcoming movie A Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood, and it stars Melissa McCarthy and Richard E. Grant, who are like 2 wonderful actors. I just love watching Richard E. Grant in anything, and for me this is like a really surprising performance from Melissa McCarthy. I thought she was absolutely smashed this movie. And basically she plays someone, it's based on a real story by this woman. Lee Israel wrote a biography called Can You Ever Forgive Me? And basically Lee Israel was a writer who started forging letters from writers and selling them for lots of money, and the title Can You Ever Forgive Me came from one of the letters that she had forged from Dorothy Parker. So it's just a fascinating little story and gives an insight into the world of art dealings But really, it's just a character study of these two lonely people, and I thought it was really wonderful.
Cool. My number 5 of the year is Judy, a film we saw relatively recently, and a film I would never have guessed would be on my best of the year.
I'm so happy it's on your list.
Yeah, I loved this movie.
I dragged Dave to see this on my birthday because it was only on during the day. So Dave took a half day from work and we went to see Judy, and I was so happy that he came.
Yeah, and it's a biopic, essentially. Not a biopic, as you like to say.
It's like potato.
No, it isn't.
Except
It's
no one says
biography
potato.
picture, not a medical procedure. It's about Judy Garland in her final days, in her final weeks, performing in the West End in London. She's broke, she's down on her luck, and it's sort of cut together with flashbacks of her troubled childhood being a star in the studio system in Hollywood. I thought Renée Zellweger was absolutely incredible in this role. I was really moved by her. I don't know a lot about Judy Garland, and I really felt for her as a person. I know she is a problematic person, I'm sure, and wasn't easy to live with. But what was presented in this movie is somebody who is essentially a prisoner of their own talent. Somebody who is being exploited by a system that is rinsing every penny out of that person for their own gain, and she's surrounded by people trying to do that, and that's a very interesting and isolating thing. And I think it is, and as a movie, it's reflective of, in modern times, the way we still treat celebrities, because there is, as attractive as it is, it's still there's a cost to being famous, and Judy Garland paid a very high cost.
Well, I'm not going to speak of this movie because it may be a bit slightly higher on my list.
Oh, I
Get
see.
to it, yeah.
Okay. All right, that's my number 5.
Okay, my number 4 is a movie we actually didn't review on the podcast because I missed it in the cinema, and Dave hasn't seen, but it's one that I caught on demand recently and I absolutely loved. It's called Late Night. Dave, do you know it? It's
No.
a screenplay by Mindy Kaling.
Oh, and Emma Thompson.
Yeah, stars Mindy Kaling and
That
Emma
looked good.
Thompson. So good. And it's directed by Nisha Ganatra, who worked on Dear White People, which we really like, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So, like, good pedigree. Written by Mindy Kaling. Directed by women, which I love. And do you know what? It's just such... It's this very small movie. I can see why it came and went and I missed it in the cinema, because it's that kind of a movie that just is very rarely made now, which is kind of mid-budget, good talent, focusing on a small enough story. And what it is basically that Emma Thompson plays Catherine Newbury, who's a late night talk show host who's been running for 30 years, but she's losing her audience. Like, her content isn't edgy, it isn't relevant, and it's like an all-white male writer's room, right? And they're all very complacent. And then Molly shows up, who's Mindy Kaling, and they acknowledge her as a diversity hire. They're like, oh, we need an Asian woman so she can do it. And she kind of shakes it all up. But so Mindy Kaling's brilliant. I love her anyway. Emma Thompson is so good in this movie. Like, I really love her. And it just... I had seen this quite recently before I'd seen Last Christmas. And this reminded me, thank God, what a good actress Emma Thompson is, because I might have forgotten otherwise. And John Lithgow's in this. He plays Emma Thompson's husband, and he's wonderful in it. But what I love about this movie is, first of all, it made me laugh a lot. Secondly, I love things that are set like around Hollywood and about writing, so it's right up my alley. But it's just a really interesting construct, because it's effectively constructed like a rom-com in terms of setup, but it's actually about the rom bit is actually a platonic relationship between two women, which I really liked. So you've got all the the fighting and the adversity and all the rest of it, but it's ultimately about their working relationship. So I found that really interesting. So I really recommend it. I'm probably sure a lot of you would have missed it as well, just because it had so little cinema time. So check it out. I really, really recommend it. And then one other person who I love is Reed Scott. Has got a really small role, and we know him as Dan from Veep, and we love him in Veep. So he's great in this as well, and he's like the head writer of the writer's room, and he's like really cross when she comes in. And there's loads of like funny lines in it, like where the men are like, ooh, I wish I was a woman of colour and then I could get any job I want, like all this kind of stuff, you know, like it's nothing's as hard as it is for a white man in America. So it's funny, but Emma Thompson and Mindy Kaling are like brilliant together.
Sounds like Joker.
Yeah.
Which was also had a very prominent late night talk show host.
It's true.
Featured.
I will say it's nothing like Joker for you now. Okay.
It's a very it's something that gets featured a lot. The behind the scenes of late night talk shows.
Well, particularly on
the
TV.
Gary Shandling show.
Yeah, it tends to be right.
Gary
like
Sanders, was it?
Studio.
No, Larry
See
Sanders.
on the Sunset. You've got like 30 Rock.
Yeah.
Actually, at the time after, we don't read reviews before we watch movies, but I was reading reviews after I watched this, and I think it was Peter Bradshaw. Somebody said that, ironically, this movie might have benefited from a writer's room, like a classic TV show, and not just have been written by one person, because they said they felt like there could have been more jokes, but that was partially because they're used to watching 30 Rock with this joke every 30 seconds.
Right, yeah.
So there certainly isn't a joke every 30 seconds in this one, but yeah, it's a lovely little movie that I really recommend.
Great. My number 4 of the year, and basically 4 through 1 were so tight for me. Any one of these could have been my number 1 of the year.
I find that hard as well. My number 1 stood out, but my 5 to 2 were slightly interchangeable, and it's really hard to rank them.
Also, I've just realised I'm just going to disagree with myself, because my number 1 was always going to be my number 1. But 4 through 2 are pretty much interchangeable. But I've somehow managed to put Knives Out at number 4, which you and I saw very recently.
Yes, so we've done a big review on Knives Out in the last month, so check it out.
Yeah, go find that if you want the full thoughts. But it's still in the cinemas, so if you haven't seen it, I really encourage you to go see it. This is a Rian Johnson, written and directed by Rian Johnson, an amazing cast playing a fun whodunit in an old mansion. It plays with murder mystery tropes. It is funny. It is unexpected. It is a movie that keeps you guessing throughout, and then, like, at certain points will just completely change what the movie is about. It's so unexpected in wonderful ways, and it's testament to Rian Johnson, who is constantly pushing the boundaries of cinematic storytelling deliberately, and I don't always agree with his choices. I'm not
The Last Jedi.
I didn't agree with everything in The Last Jedi. I think overall that wasn't a great movie, but I love his work. I loved Brick and Looper.
Love Looper.
Or Brothers Bloom I wasn't a fan of, but he's somebody who is always presents something that you probably haven't seen before, which is something I really appreciate in modern filmmaking. And besides that, it is very clever and enjoyable, but it's just got a cast that are just having an absolute blast. Daniel Craig in particular is absolutely wonderful as Benoit Blanc, the private investigator, Southern Fried style. And apparently we're getting more. We're getting more Benoit Blanc movies, which
Benoit Blanc forever.
I could watch forever, and I'd much rather watch that than James Bond.
Well, I have a bit more to say about this movie, but it may be higher up on my list, so I'm going to hold off on that one.
Okay. Well, what's next?
Now, next on my list is one you've already mentioned.
We just know your list now. Yeah. It's just constructed in our heads.
Why do we so many of the same movies? This usually doesn't happen.
I wonder, because we just go to the same movies together.
Well, no, but this usually doesn't happen. So my third movie is Judy. To kind of just add a little bit to what you said, hugely emotional. I found this really wonderful study of a woman in the kind of final months of her life. Like you, I don't know that much about Judy Garland, but I have that very deep, like, affinity and love for her, and I think that so many people around the world have, and it really does come from how much I watched The Wizard of Oz as a little girl, and I loved her. So I went into this movie loving her and being on her side. As you said, I'm sure she's very difficult, but I was on her side in the movie. Director Rupert Gould, and it was an adaptation of the West End and Broadway play End of the Rainbow. But really what I want to talk about, and you didn't really touch on, is Renée Zellweger's performance. I mean, God, I knew she was a good actress, but like, she's just truly... Her performance completely elevates this movie. It's a good movie anyway, but her performance makes it a classic. She's a really wonderful actress. She's a really wonderful singer, and I'm so happy that she's... I mean, as we're recording this, all the big awards haven't really been announced yet, but she's already up for a Critics' Choice and a Golden Globe. No doubt she'll be up for an Oscar. And I think this was the best single performance I've seen from an actor all year. Truly moving. And honestly,
Yeah.
I mean, if you can sit through this, oddly my little sister Elizabeth did, and not cry, then you're a monster,
Elizabeth. You're dead inside.
Honestly,
I was absolutely
I just spent the whole
impuddled at
movie
the end of
waiting
it.
for her to sing Over the Rainbow. Like, I could barely, I was like on the edge of my seat just waiting for Over the Rainbow. But Renée Zellweger is something else. Like, she's a phenomenon. So that's what elevated the movie for me to a third position.
She not only nails Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but like does a full like emotional arc in that song.
Oh
like
God, it's
she's
unbelievable.
performing the acting during that song, and the way she delivers it conveys a lifetime of heartbreak and emotion and hope and promise.
And how she interacts with her children, like watching her as a mother, watching her as a
she's
diva,
complicated because
watching
you look at her and she's not a good mother, essentially. In many ways she is not doing the right thing by her child, but then ultimately is well intentioned and
she loves her children.
Yes,
that's all you
exactly.
can ask.
And look, that's all parents are doing, and most parents are just trying to make the best choices
and
for
what's
their
fascinating is, like, and you see this a lot actually in real life, the financial ruin that somebody can be experiencing who has been so rich at a point in their life. And I do find that, like, truly fascinating. And obviously there was, like, lots around the studio system and, you know, kind of what we now know as the Me Too movement.
It happens all the time.
Treatment that's been going on in Hollywood forever, and like the treatment she got as a young girl. So I really recommend this movie. If you missed it in the cinema, go and catch it.
Yes. Okay.
Dave.
My number 3 of the year is a movie we saw mere days ago. And
so no recency bias whatsoever.
No. So, I mean, this is problematic in some ways because often something is more prominent in your memory.
But also often the best movies come out towards the end of the year anyway, because that's awards season.
Yes,
it's a bit of a chicken
true.
and egg thing.
And this isn't really an awards type movie, as you're suggesting. But this is a Netflix film that got released very recently, and it's Klaus, the origin story of Santa, basically. It's
wonderful.
It's Santa Begins. And in many ways, it really just is that, because the director, Sergio Pablo, who is a Spanish animator and writer who is responsible for the Despicable Me franchise.
Oh, wow.
He created that. And
so
must
he's got
be
a lot of money then.
Must be absolutely minted.
Does he make money from, like, the Minion sales?
The man made the Minions, so he is like, he must be swimming in it. So much so that he set up his own studio, and his own animation studio called, I think, Sergio Pablo Studios.
Why not? I'd call my studio Cathy.
Why not?
Studio.
Yeah, and this is I think this is their first film. It's at the very least, it's his directorial debut. This film, Klaus. And he's also a guy who came up through the Disney system in the 90s. He worked on Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Treasure Planet. And there's a lot of the animation, the art style of this movie does hark back to those, I feel like those classic 90s style of 2D animation.
Yeah, well, that's what I loved about it, because I really did love this movie, albeit it's not my top 5, but I love the 2D animation for sure. It feels more classic to me.
It's kind of classic while with a modern edge. It's got that
classic with a modern edge. That sounds like a bad aftershave.
No, but it does. I'm going to dig into the behind the scenes stuff of this because I haven't had time. But it's got that sort of the way Spider-Verse pushed forward animation style. It feels like I don't think this was hand drawn, but it looks 2D and hand drawn. But it's got 3D elements, but they've been blended particularly well.
Did you say that it was people who worked on Into the Spider-Verse?
I believe some of the animators crossed over.
Doesn't surprise me from a quality point of view. For anyone who doesn't know, Into the Spider-Verse was your number 1 movie.
Yeah, God, I love that movie. Anyway, and this kind of is like that because it's story first, and this is a story that was written and directed by Sergio Pablo. So I'm just super impressed by him in general.
So you love him now.
I love him now. But I also, like, for many years, my favourite working studio. And the things I used to look forward to most were Pixar movies. They were,
and
like,
then Disney
and I'm talking
killed
like, no, not necessarily, but there was a period of the golden age of Pixar for me was, Nemo, Up, WALL-E, all these kind of things, and that was just a studio like shooting on all cylinders, and this feels like a bit like that, just like
it's like the new kid in town.
A very well put together and thought out story with real genuine warmth and heart.
Such a good story, and we cried so much. I mean, I know we keep talking about how much we cried, but like
it's
to watch
really
it over
beautiful.
Christmas was wonderful.
But it's a very neatly constructed screenplay that not a single character is wasted. Everyone has something to do. They all develop. Everyone gets emotional payoff.
And we kept saying we don't know where it's going. Like we couldn't figure it out.
No, it's even though you know it's a Santa Claus origin story, it will surprise you. The construction around that is genuinely original, and doesn't play and. Oh God, I just love it. It's also really, really funny and sweet and warm. It's for me. It's a perfect film, and one I will.
Sounds like it should have been your number one day.
Watch every year. Well, that's what I kind of said. They're all a bit interchangeable.
Yeah, I mean, it's
for
really
me.
hard to rank 5 movies that when you watch as many movies as we do in the year.
But also, I think it's important to recommend this because it's the kind of thing that Netflix, who release so much content, it could just get missed.
Yeah, because all that's on the front of Netflix at the moment is that Witcher. Like, we had to go searching for Klaus because we'd heard about it from somebody else.
Yeah, shout out to Tom Silcock. Thanks for the recommendation.
Okay, great. And then my number 2 is one we did review like only in the last couple of weeks. So I won't talk about it too much because we did a very long review on it, actually. But it's Marriage Story. So directed by Noah Baumbach and starring Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver. Also on Netflix. Netflix are like pulling a blinder this year. It did have a small cinematic release, but again we missed it. We really struggle to see any relatively smaller independent movies because when they do get a showing it's infrequent, and you know, when you're going on like a Friday night they tend not to be on. So I was so happy this was on Netflix because I'm a big Noah Baumbach fan. But just what was so wonderful about this movie was, again similar to some of the other ones I discussed, is it's a small story but it's a very big story in two people's lives. It's about a couple who are going through a divorce and how they're dealing with the custody of their son. And Adam Driver is just unbelievable in this movie, right? I've always loved him. He's a great actor. God help him, he did his best in Star Wars. But like, he is something else in this movie. And Scarlett Johansson was a complete delight and a surprise for me. I never knew she was this good an actress because while I've seen Adam Driver in a lot of kind of indie stuff, and like I've seen him in Brooklyn settings because I watched all of Girls and loved Girls, this is like Scarlett Johansson, like I really only know her from kind of like Avengers and stuff like that, so to see her in this kind of role I found really delightful.
Well, we're watching Under the Skin tonight.
We are watching Under the Skin tonight for our Patreon, because that won the most recent rewatch poll. But yeah, I just was blown away, honestly, and it really deeply affected me watching the effect of all this on the kid, on the couple. And again, there's no point in me labouring it because we did discuss it loads only 2 weeks ago. But it's truly something I would totally recommend you watch it on Netflix. I probably don't recommend you watch it if you're going through a divorce or a separation with your partner because it's very raw. Like there's a couple of scenes between them that are like really tough to watch. There's also a lot of humour. I think it's been just done fantastically, and I think Noah Baumbach is an unbelievable director. And for anyone who's interested, I don't know if anyone's listened to the Alec Baldwin podcast, right? It's called Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin. I love that podcast. And he does great interviews. And he interviews Noah Baumbach about this movie. And I really recommend that episode because I found it just really interesting to listen to after I'd seen the movie. So I totally recommend that as well. And totally recommend you watch the movie over on Netflix.
Good, me too. It's a brilliant movie. But it's not my number 2.
Ooh.
My number 2 is a movie you haven't seen, but I think you would like, is Midsommar.
Well, I don't like horror movies.
Yeah, but you liked Hereditary, which was the first movie by this director Ari Aster, who I believe wrote this as well. Should have done my fact checks.
Dave, this is the one episode of the year we prep for. You could have done this.
I'm pretty confident he did. This is an incredible movie and one that has stayed with me more than I think any other movie this year in terms of like haunts me.
Well, this got a lot of feedback from when we asked people their best and worst movies of the year. This one showed up a lot.
Yeah, you're going to hear that at the end of this episode, because we've got some listeners who give us some audio messages. And yeah, it's either the best or worst for a lot of people.
Which is quite funny.
And I kind of get that. I think it's not an easy movie to watch necessarily, but I think it's an incredibly well thought out achievement. And I think him and Mike Flanagan, to me, are the two most interesting voices in horror movie making today. This is very obsessed with character. And your central character is, forget the name of the character, but she's played by Florence Pugh, who is, I think, my breakout star of the year.
Oh, she is having a good year.
Oh my God, yeah, Little Women, which I'm very excited for. But also we saw Fighting for My Family, which was a really nice little movie by Stephen Merchant, and she's the centre of that as well.
She's brilliant. And she's in the upcoming, what's it called? Black Widow?
Oh yeah, she's Scarlett Johansson's sister.
Scarlett Johansson.
Anyway,
what a role!
She's a real up and comer, and
I don't think she's an up and comer. I think she's up. She's came and she's here.
She's up and has came.
Yeah. But I love when you've never heard of these actresses or actors, and suddenly then every movie you see they're in, and you like, how did this happen? Who's their agent? I want this. This is amazing.
Yes, there's a lot of that, but there's a bit of luck and everyone working hard, but she's able to back it up with talent.
Apparently she's amazing in Little Women, which we haven't seen.
She's insanely talented, and I'd love for you to watch this movie to experience her performance, but also the journey that character is put on, because a little like Hereditary, this deals a lot with grief.
Hereditary is was to be fair such a good movie and so disturbing.
Yes. So this deals with, and this is also very disturbing. But it's I think it's even better than Hereditary if you ask me. But it deals with grief, toxic relationships, and also in many ways it presents interesting villains who you kind of sympathise with because your protagonists are kind of so awful. So there's the purity of these villagers, and then there's the sort of these American students coming in with all their negativity and baggage and selfishness. So that the movie doesn't make it easy for you to be presented with heroes and villains. So it's got something to say about society. It's got something to say about the grieving process, and it's genuinely a very unique world in which he created and brought to life with this blistering daylight. It's just all so bright and colourful, which is not the trappings of a horror movie. It's a brilliant movie. I love it. I want to watch it again. It stuck with me. I left the cinema just like stunned and a bit sick and a bit sort of confused as well, which I think is all these, it made me feel things, is what I could have summed it up in one sentence. So I'll stop talking now, but I want to watch that again. I'd love for you to watch it, and I'd recommend people give it a go. You may not like it, but I think that's okay.
It does sound really good, to be fair.
Where are you taking us? This is the muddiest path in the world.
Yeah, we like to record these walking around in the park, and I just got bored of walking around.
Well, we had a nice little route going there.
I got bored of looping the playground.
Right, what's your number? We're onto your number one of the year, and I have no idea what it is. I'm racking my brain.
Okay, well then you missed the cue from earlier because it's Knives Out.
Oh yeah.
And the reason I picked Knives Out is because it is the movie that I have to say gave me the most joy this year. I agree with every single thing you said about it. Like, I was just so happy watching Knives Out. I was just sitting there with a massive smile on my face. It ran at an amazing pace for me, and even for a second got bored, and I do get bored in movies when they are long, and this is relatively long. I love murder mysteries. As I said, I love character stories, and this is just a character driven story with a phenomenal plot, kind of effectively in one setting, an amazing cast, and really truly wonderfully written and put together by Rian Johnson. Like, hats off to him, he's amazing.
It's very funny as well, isn't it? And it's got
so
sharp dialogue,
funny, and I just like again, look, we've just done a review of this, so please go back and listen to that if you want a bigger one.
If you just want to hear us gushing for half an hour.
Well, you can actually hear the joy in our voices. Like, you know, sometimes we come out of the cinema and we're quite deflated or a bit tired, but we came out of Knives Out, we were like, bah!
It was just satisfying.
And I told my whole family to go and watch it, and actually every single member of my family went to watch it and all loved it as much as we did. And I don't often say to everyone, no, you really need to go and see this, you'll really love this movie. And it was just, I was happy knowing they were going to see it, because it's like spreading the joy. I was on the train to work, I heard people talking about how much they loved it. Like, people love this movie. And Daniel Craig was really I'm really amazed at him in this movie, because frankly I only know Daniel Craig from James Bond, and I've always found him a bit dry. So to see him in this performance was like a real surprise for me, and one that I really enjoyed. They're all amazing. Absolutely every bit of it I loved, and I think the story was so clever. And actually, I've been reading a lot of Agatha Christie lately. I read Murder on the Orient Express before we went to see this movie, kind of as a bit of background, like research, because I know he was inspired by her, and forgot to talk about it in the review. But he does so many good elements from Agatha Christie. And then I've since bought a book of her short stories that I've been enjoying, and I love, Murder, She Wrote is my favourite TV show ever. I just love murder mysteries, and we did watch Murder Mystery on Netflix earlier in the year, which I enjoyed. But this is I have a feeling that he's just kicked off a new genre, and a returning genre hit now.
Yes.
I think everyone's going to be doing whodunits. Yeah, and so they should.
Because it made a lot of money as well, so I feel like
it's so good.
You're right, that we're going to get a lot of copycats here, but I don't think it's that easy.
But all you need for a good film is a good script, good actors, and a good director. What annoys me, and why I've steered clear of those movies in my top 5, as much as I enjoy them, I'm not a snob, I enjoy blockbusters, really enjoy blockbusters. They're just not the movies I want to see made. I'm bored of them. What I want to see is good film with good characters, that's good fun, that I enjoy. And there's absolutely no reason for anyone to be spending hundreds of millions of dollars to make movies. It's just not necessary. And I just want to see movies where actors get to shine. To see Daniel Craig is miserable in James Bond movies. He's come out himself and say he'd basically rather die than do another one. Chris what's-his-face is miserable doing the Marvel movies. Those actors don't like being in those movies after a while. They get sick of them, and they're desperate to get out of their contracts. So to see the joy of his name, Chris?
See also the press junkets with the Rise of Skywalker cast.
Yeah, they're no fun for those actors. They're acting in front of blue screens with CGI. They've got nothing to do, and you can just tell everyone in this movie is having the time. They're enjoying themselves as much as we're enjoying watching it. And I feel like now Rian Johnson can approach any actor about anything, and he will get it made.
Oh, people will be lining up for the next one.
This is an actor's dream. It's like Marriage Story. Any actor would want to be in a Noah Baumbach movie now, right?
But how fun when we get more Benoit Blanc movies. I hope he just assembles a different stellar cast each time.
It will have to be.
Oh, it's going to be such a
laugh. It won't work.
Laugh.
You could never do the same story again.
You make such an interesting point, though, about he may have just revitalised an entire genre in cinema by himself.
It's so huge on TV. People the biggest shows in the world on TV, actual biggest shows in the world, are Law and Order, CSI, Navy, whatever. They're the biggest movies because shows. All those half-hour things, or those hour-long kind of procedural shows, because people love whodunit, and I think it's been lacking in film. So I think hats off to Rian Johnson. He's amazing, and I love him.
Yeah, and I welcome that as well, because I agree with you. I have. I think horror is still going strong at cinema, and my number 2, and I just discussed, and Dr. Sleep was amazing this year. There's a lot of great horror being produced because that's low budget and low risk, relevant, and has high return.
Yeah.
So it makes sense for studios, and I think murder mysteries could easily fit within that bracket as well. These don't cost a lot to make.
And look at one of the biggest things in the UK at the moment for entertainment is escape rooms. People love them. People love flexing their brains and trying to figure stuff out. But Dave, can I guess your number 1?
Go on then.
I have a feeling that we've not discussed it, but because it's not been anywhere else in your top 5, I just have a slight feeling that the movie that's your number 1 is exactly what I said I'm sick of in cinema.
Yes, right. It's Avengers Endgame. And I totally agree with you. I'm also, before I gush about this movie for a little bit, I'm going to say I'm also exhausted by franchise. I have franchise fatigue now. And looking back over this year, besides this, which really delivered me a very profound emotional experience personally, I There's no other big franchise movies that I enjoyed or thought were good. Most of them are, and there's even ones that from beloved things from my childhood, like the Men in Black, which I didn't even bother going to see. I just feel like we're just on a treadmill of nostalgia mining.
That's why Knives Out is so good, because it's a purely original movie, which is very rare.
So rare.
Not based on a book, not based on a movie, not based on a video game.
Yeah.
But go on, tell us how much you love Endgame.
but that said, I had a transcendent cinematic experience with this movie, and so it's a lot of it's just down to personal taste, and nostalgia is rooted in trying to recapture your childhood. And
you liked Endgame for a lot more than that, right?
But I liked Endgame. All of that I brought to the cinema, but what that movie brought was a very, very satisfying and rewarding conclusion to a 22 movie series, which, when you say it out loud, is insane. That they managed to not only get out that many movies that are, for the most part, of a very consistent and high standard, if you ask me. I know they're not for everybody.
They're certainly well made.
But they all just kept feeding into a larger thing, and this is where we got to. And
what it has is a vision, which is very coherent, I think. Give or take a couple of exceptions, which I may talk about later.
Yeah, they didn't always get it right.
Yeah. But it's some feat to have done it, and I personally really enjoyed Endgame despite myself.
But besides all that, it was just a fun watch. Oh my God, it was so fun. And emotional. I cried so many times. I saw it twice, and I will watch it again. And I was devastated both times by the end of this movie. Absolutely floored me, because we've spent so much time with these characters. They paid them off in the most perfect way.
It felt like the movie where we got to hang with the character, like we got more time with the characters, didn't it? Like I felt like I knew Scarlett Johansson more than I ever had, and I felt like there was a room for them to breathe, which is sometimes lacking in these movies.
But you're right, for something that could so easily have become plot, noise. This is a movie that in its opening 15 minutes does something unexpected and then hits the brakes and slows down, and then spends a lot of time with character. A lot of time. The whole middle section of this movie is that. And not to shit on Star Wars again, but that's exactly the opposite. And that's people love that movie, and that's cool. The subjective. But for me, that movie didn't deliver on any of those fronts. This movie had more characters and more work to do, and did it far better, and was just funny and heartfelt. And I can't describe enough how happy I was sitting in this movie, being surprised and delighted and happy. I just walked out so insanely happy. I wanted to watch it again immediately. However, that all said, I think I might need a break. I need a break from Marvel movies, and they're not going to give it to me.
Good luck to you on that.
So now I feel like my relationship with this studio might sour a little bit. I feel like
never
we're
forget
on a real
Endgame.
high. We're on a real high here, people, and I fear for what's next, because I'm not like pumped for Black Widow prequels and whatever else is coming. So yeah, we'll see what the future brings.
But I'll never forget the joy in your face when we left Endgame. It was more than our wedding day, the day our son was born,
Not
the
true.
day we found out I was pregnant again. Nothing will ever beat the Endgame. And I'm happy, and I was happy I enjoyed it too, because actually I would have hated to also myself have spent 22 movies with this franchise and not like the last one, because I have put a lot of involuntary time into that cinematic universe.
But it's so rare. It's just so rare to be so excited by something, and then to have your expectations met and exceeded. I mean,
it's very rare.
An absolute it's a miracle that they pulled off.
Because I was expecting Knives Out to be brilliant, because I'd heard everyone saying it was brilliant, and it really delivered. And that is like all you want, right? To just feel joy when you leave the cinema.
Yeah.
So right, we need to take a break now, because officially I'm actually now 9 months pregnant. It's less than 4 weeks till
You're
I'm
giving
due.
birth? Are you in labour right
No,
now?
but
Is
I
that
need-
why we need to take a break?
Take a break.
I like that you let me finish my endgame rant.
Yes, I will always
before the
let you
baby
talk
comes.
about Endgame because I'm a very nice wife. So we're going to actually cut now to our first guest contributions of the year. We've got Helen O'Hara and Chris Hewitt, who are two of our favourite past guests. We love them, and they've actually recorded their best and worst of the year cinema style for us.
Hello, Dave and Cathy.
Hello, Dave and Cathy.
This is Chris Hewitt and Helen O'Hara
Hello.
from the Empire Podcast. And we, in true cinema fashion, have decided to record our contribution to your year-end special by going for a bit of a walk.
We are so on brand right now.
Yeah,
My
we're
goodness.
also...
Your brand.
Yes, indeed. Also, it's a good idea and I might nick it.
Hey, we should
Actually,
do
it's a
this.
really
This
good
is
idea.
great, yeah.
The film walk.
Get our steps up.
The
I think it
film
could work.
walkers. Walkie film. Anyway, yes. We live fairly near each other, so we decided to meet up and go for a little stroll in the beautiful December rain. And you wanted to ask us about our worst films of the year and our best films of the year. Helen, start with your worst. What's your worst
Well,
film of the year?
I think we agree on this. I think it's Six Underground, which
Yes.
went straight to Netflix. I mean, great cast, obviously Ryan Reynolds leading it. Michael Bay directing, which is not always a terrible thing. It can be good. But in this case,
Two of his films are in the Criterion Collection, Helen. Two.
I believe you, Chris. I would never doubt it. But
It's an empirical fact.
this film
It will not be in the Criterion Collection.
will not, because it's dreadful. The script is terrible. He's lost the ability to direct action, judging by this.
Almost deliberately so, it seems. It's almost like he's been avant-garde with it. But it's an incoherent, sloppy, smug mess that has a really sort of lackadaisical attitude towards collateral damage and the cost of human life.
Yes.
And as much as I love... Hey, how do you guys do this, by the way? Because I've been walking and talking now for about a minute and a half, and I'm absolutely fucked. Anyway, yes, as much as I love a bit of Ryan Rodney Reynolds, his persona doesn't always fit every genre, I would say.
No, and if he keeps trying to do Deadpool in every genre, we might get tired. It's
Indeed.
possible.
So we recommend very strongly that you do not watch Six Underground, or indeed any of the sequels that they're threatening. 7 Underground, 8 Underground, and who knows,
9
one day
Overground.
possibly 25 Overground. Overground? That's a train. But yes, it's terrible. But anyway, Helen, are we aligned also on our best film of the year?
Well, it's one of my... I have kind of a top 4 that are kind of interchangeable. Of
course you do.
yes. Sure, let's
Sure.
go with that.
Indeed. It is Six Underground.
No.
No?
No.
Oh, I got confused.
It is.
Well, because I'm a big old walking self-parody,
Yeah.
my film of the year is legit, genuinely Avengers Endgame. There may be better pieces of cinema that have come out during the year, but nothing made me have all the feels the way that Avengers Endgame, and in particular a couple of moments, have. In fact, there's one moment in Avengers Endgame that has made me have the feels in a way that very few things in my actual life have done. So, yes, it is an incredible achievement, the culmination somehow of what was then a 22-part story.
Yep.
Never been done before. Even the Carry On films didn't run into each other the way these do. And somehow, improbably, despite all the characters, despite all the moving parts, they managed to stick the landing, which I've learned is a gymnastics reference.
I told you.
I know, but people won't have heard that podcast yet.
Okay.
And not about landing a plane. Anyway, Helen.
Yeah, no, I love it to death. I love it 3,000, in fact. It's just incredible. I like everything Chris said. But also, visually it's dazzling, but it also does devote time to the characters. And these are people that you have, or at least I have come to love over the past 10 years. And I think it gives all of them something to do, some kind of moment of, importance and humanity and alienness in some cases. And it just works. I absolutely love it.
Anyway, I think you asked for a 30-second clip.
I'm so
And
sorry.
we have over-delivered, if anything. And this probably isn't even usable. But anyway, we wanted to wish you guys a happy new year.
Happy Christmas.
Great
and New Year.
2020. And here's to many more cine miles over the years. And I hope you guys don't mind about film walkie. It's going to be great. But we have to go to Milwaukee to do it.
Film walkie in Milwaukee.
Film walkie in Milwaukee, yeah. That's the only way it'll work.
With Fred Lillard and
Yeah.
Matthew Willard.
Also, they can't sue us in Milwaukee because of the non-extradition policy that city has. Anyway, bye, Dave and Kathy.
Bye.
It's been fun. Bye.
Thanks, Helen and Chris, and really looking forward to listening to Film Walkie in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I can't wait.
It's a very specific premise.
We
in a
won't,
very
we won't
specific
sue
place.
you. You just have to share the profits. It's fine.
Wait, there's profits?
80-20 split. 80 to us.
Can you make money in podcasting?
Well, they probably can. We can't.
All right. We are now going to do our worst movies of the year, and again, this is subjective. This is what we
Don't
did.
troll us. These are movies that did not bring us joy.
Yes. No joy was found
no joy.
for us
and
in these movies.
speaking of no joy,
Go on,
the
what you
first
got?
movie on my list is Joker.
Joker.
Joker, yeah. Just a movie that I hated from start to finish, despite knowing there's some good elements in it. Like, I think Joaquin Phoenix is brilliant. Obviously, it was very well shot. It looked great. But yeah, I was truly upset after seeing it. I felt miserable after seeing it. Anyone who asked me if I would recommend it, I said frankly no, I wouldn't recommend it. You need to be in a very good headspace to see this movie, and do not go if you're not feeling good, or maybe if you're on your own, or if it's late and you're tired. Like, I had so many caveats to like whether or not people should see this movie, and ultimately I just really didn't enjoy it. And frankly,
So you have to watch it first thing in the morning after a coffee on the best day of the year, on Christmas Day.
no, like height of summer, I'd say. And I mean, obviously it garnered lots of controversy, and there was really kind of differing reviews on it, but not for me. Not surprised it's grossing nearly $1 billion, because of course lots of people loved it, but yeah, not for me. And I hope he doesn't show up in the new universe with, you know, the Robert Pattinson one, because I'm done with it.
I don't
want it to
think
come
that's happening.
Well, I read an interview with Todd Phillips actually last week, where he was saying that you know, there's a reading of this movie where like actually Joker's imagined all
Oh
those
my
things,
God.
which really annoys him. He's like, don't just suddenly say your movie could have been completely imagined by the protagonist.
I read that as well. That's
Yeah.
infuriating.
And it kind of even makes me hate the movie more, to be honest. So anyway, Joker, top of my worst list.
You can't be like, oh, what if it was all a dream? I mean, way to undercut your whole movie. Or it's like, anyway.
Anyway, what's on top of your list?
Well, I didn't like order these or anything,
Oh, okay.
and I only found two because I just love all movies except these two. The first one is Bird Box. It was the first film we reviewed this year, back in January. Netflix exclusive, sort of horror sci-fi thing with Sandra Bullock, in which everyone has to wear blindfolds, because if you look at these monsters, then you want to kill yourself.
You do something. Yeah, I can't even remember what you do now.
That's the plot of this movie, which isn't a spoiler. You find that out in the first 5 minutes. Which I guess is an interesting idea. It's like A Quiet Place, but what if seeing instead of hearing? But A Quiet Place is a masterpiece compared to this. I mean, it's a brilliant movie anyway, but when you compare it to this, you're like, Jesus, lads, look at what they did and look at what you did, and take stock, because this is a bad movie.
And yet everyone, including us, watched it on like New Year's Day last year.
Everyone
This
watched
year.
this because it was
on Netflix.
I think,
Why not?
I think I'm right in saying it is. Netflix rarely release their numbers, but they do occasionally to brag. And they released them for this because it was a phenomenal success. I think probably
It's a great release strategy though. New Year's Day, everyone's sick of going out. No
Yeah.
one's got any money for the cinema. Like, this is why I do like watching stuff on Netflix, because particularly the things they've pushed like this, because it is a zeitgeist thing. Like, you can chat, like everyone's chatting about it, like everyone will have seen it, and my favourite thing is like talking about movies with people. So I actually got some pleasure from Bird Box because I enjoyed all the discourse.
I got some pleasure as well because I trashed it to all hell. So go listen to that. I won't speak anymore. What's next for you?
Some may call it Sad Astra, I call it Bad Astra.
Oh, wait, you liked this at the time?
I thought
Yeah, you did.
I thought it was good, like grand. And the more I thought about it
Wait,
afterwards,
you thought it was good, grand, and
and
now
the
it's
more I
your
thought
worst
about
film of the
it's
year?
in my list because Joker's my worst film of the year.
All right.
They're not really ordered. Just Brad Pitt was so bad in it. I'm sorry, Brad Pitt. I know you're an avid listener, right? But honestly, what was going on in this movie? The more I chat about it afterwards and talk to people, which is often when I reflect, I was like, what was that? And it had so much potential, and I think that's why it's made my list, because it had so much potential that it didn't deliver on. So yeah, anyway.
Shouldn't this be on your second chances then? Because I think you gave it a good review at the time.
I don't remember giving it a good review.
Yeah, we
So
were generally
apologies.
quite positive about it.
I mean, I didn't give it a bad review, but now, the more I think about it, the sadder I am.
I'll agree, I hadn't even considered it on any of my lists, which is maybe telling that
You forgot about
it didn't leave much of an impact.
What,
but I
Brad
do
Pitt's
remember...
constant voiceover on every scene. Like, the more I thought about the voiceover,
Oh, yeah.
I was like cringing.
There's a lot of problems with it, but it worked for me. I remember really enjoying it. Coming out of it, I stick by that. I think it's a well put together, sort of thoughtful little space version of Conrad. Yeah, it's not little. It's like a space retelling of Conrad's Heart of Darkness, and had some really interesting ideas and visuals. So yeah, I disagree with you on that one.
And
I've got. Oh, you've got loads more than me, so you go.
No,
again.
you go. What's on your list?
My other one was Glass.
Oh, I forgot about Glass.
Exactly.
I completely forgot about Glass.
Glass also came earlier this year. This was the Avengers Endgame of the Shyamalan cinematic universe with Split and Unbreakable, which he just decided was a thing 2 years ago.
Fair
when
play
Split
to him.
came
Do you know what? If I could eke a franchise out, I would.
I just thought, right, first of all, Split was a good bit of fun. Had fun with that. James McAvoy just chewing it up massively, and he's a total hoot.
He's brilliant.
And we watched Unbreakable for the first time this year.
Yeah. We committed to this trilogy this year.
I think you'd seen it years ago. I'd never seen Unbreakable. It was on my shame list. Finally rectified that, and I love that movie. My God,
good movie.
Unbreakable is insanely good. Like, couldn't believe how much I liked it. As good as, if not better than The Sixth Sense. It's kind of superhero story on a small character-driven scale. Bruce Willis is amazing. It's just Shyamalan firing on all cylinders. I loved it. So then I did get kind of excited for this because Split was a bit of fun. I thought the fact that they shoehorned in Bruce Willis at the end of Split was like, oh, okay.
It's just forward thinking. You need to plot where your next paycheck's coming from. I don't begrudge him.
So then this came along, and I was actually quite interested to see it. But I thought it was just a total disaster. I thought it was...
I can't remember it.
It was just like nonsense. Also didn't have enough Samuel L. Jackson in it. Insufficient Glass. In a movie called Glass.
Every scene with Samuel L. Jackson was really good, though.
Yeah, no, there's some good,
really
there's some good stuff in here, but it just amounts to nothing.
All we have to say is two things: tattoos on the wrist and empty restaurants.
I mean, that's
and
just
for
like
more, you go and listen to our review.
Oh yeah, go listen to the review because
pulled it apart.
It was a movie I cannot believe that's what we got. It was just fucking terrible.
It was quite something.
Anyway,
now, so your two worst movies both starred Sarah Paulson.
Oh yeah. Well, it starred. Come on, Bird Box. She's in it for a minute.
I know, yeah, but she's actually an actress we love, so that's funny.
She's great. Yeah.
Just goes to show sometimes you can't blame the actors. Okay, what else? I'm going to go.
No,
really quickly.
you can almost never blame the actors. The act's never. It's almost never the actors'
They
fault.
do read the scripts first. Okay, so Last Christmas, I've said enough about it in my review. It's a truly terrible movie. The most fun I had with Last Christmas was when I came out and told Dave in explicit detail what the plot had been, and then he wished he'd seen it.
It made me want to see it.
Yeah.
And actually, we a couple of listeners wrote in to say that your review made them want to see it as well. So you're actually driving the sales of this movie.
So Emma Thompson, thank God you did Late Night this year, or I could never forgive you. She actually wrote Last Christmas.
When you told me where that movie goes, I could not believe it. I was actually stunned.
Everyone knows, though. Everyone knows the twist, even people who didn't see it, though I'm not telling it. Another one I absolutely despised this year was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Quentin Tarantino movie. Again, there's, like Joker, there's good elements to it. Of course, there's good actors.
And again, if you like that movie, it's okay.
Yeah.
We got a lot of angry responses from people.
You don't need to send me mean things about it, okay? But honestly, left me with a really bad taste in my mouth. Felt like it was a very toxic masculine movie, and I felt like it does no good for the world to have movies like that put into it. And finally, I can't believe you didn't mention this one, Dark Phoenix.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Another end to a franchise that was really bad.
That was awful.
That was like, like, it's funny that you were so negative about Star Wars, because I'm sorry, Dark Phoenix, talk about killing a franchise. I mean, knocking it dead on the head, like, so funny. I can't even remember it. Like, one of the good things about having a movie podcast
genuinely
is,
forgot that happened.
but that's why the good thing about having a movie podcast is, at the end of the year, you go, what movies did I like? You can just scroll back through your own feed. And I was like, oh, we saw Dark Phoenix this year. I'd forgotten about that.
I will say that at the time, I do remember saying it was better than I thought it was going to be. As in, it's totally fine. Like, it's not the complete...
Getting proper mental health care can help you feel more like you. That's why Cerebral offers convenient access to online mental health services, including therapy and medication management. Cerebral's diverse clinician team can help with anxiety, insomnia, relationship issues, workplace stress, and more. You can schedule and communicate with your care team through Cerebral's mobile app and attend your sessions from the comfort of your own home. Get started with or without insurance. Plus, you can use your FSA or HSA. Start your first month for 50% off at Cerebral.com/ACAST.
disaster everyone thought it was going to be. Like, it's just so bland and forgettable. I literally did forget that it happened. I can't believe that was this year. But yeah, what a sad way to end what was once a brilliant franchise.
Actually, James McAvoy, not a good year. Luckily, he topped it off, finished it with his Darker Materials. Or his Dark Materials.
His Dark Material. His Darker Materials is the podcast which you can listen to.
That Dave did on his
with
Dark
former
Materials.
guest Helen O'Hara and myself. Soft plug there for that. Only on
that's
Spotify.
a pretty hard plug. That's a
Okay.
hard plug.
All right, let's move on.
So yeah,
is that it? Are you done?
yeah.
Wow, what a bad year for bad movies.
Yeah.
Or a good year for bad
A
movies.
good year for bad movies. Now we're going to take another break, and I think we need to record the rest of this indoors because I'm a bit wrecked now. So now we're going to throw to Craig Parkinson, another guest we had this year, who's going to talk us through his best and worst of the year.
Dave, Cathy, hello, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. It's Craig Parkinson here from the Two Shot Podcast. You've asked me for my film of the year and also my worst film of the year. And I don't think I've stepped up to that question at all, because I don't have one film of the year, I have two. It's been really hard to get to the pictures this year, but when I have, I've sourced out films that I really, really wanted to see, whether they would fulfill me or not. Luckily, the majority of them have. So, in no order at all, my first film is Mark Jenkins's Cornish set film Bait, which is all about family and friendship and relationship, and visually and sonically it's like nothing I've ever seen before. More independent films need to be supported like this, and if you haven't seen Bait, then you're in for an absolute treat. It's it's unlike anything you've seen, and I loved it so much. My only snag was the fact that I had to pay so much in London for a ticket to the pictures that it counteracted independent cinema and getting new and sort of younger people through the doors to be inspired and see films like this. That kind of upset me. And my other film of the year is Marriage Story. Now, I've been filming in Manchester a lot this year, and I had a Sunday off, and I went to see Marriage Story and The Irishman in the same day, and I saw Marriage Story in the afternoon, and I cried and laughed. It is, it's near perfect for me, and I thought the depiction of the breakdown of a marriage, and also how there's an amazing film. It's not a spoiler. There's an amazing scene where Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver have an argument, and the depiction of how it escalates is so real, and I'm sure everybody who's ever had an argument can relate to it. And I loved it so much. and Adam Driver should win every award going for me. Now, worst film of the year. I don't know, I haven't seen anything that's been terrible, but I tell you one thing that I was disappointed at. So this is my disappointment film of the year, and I saw this at the start of the year, and it was Us by Jordan Peele. I had loved and still love Get Out for so many reasons. So my expectations were so high. And apart from the soundtrack, the brilliant soundtrack, I have to say, I lost interest and I found it slightly self-indulgent. I know a lot of people will disagree with me there, but look, apart from seeing Hobbs and Shaw 3 times with an 8-year-old boy, Us was... Look, there's a lot to like in Hobbs and Shaw, but there's a lot to hate. Anyway, look, I'm going to go. I'm waffling. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Hi, we're back, and we're going to give you our honourable mentions. These are the movies that didn't make our top 5 this year, but that we really struggled with getting into a top 5, or that we just want to give a shout to.
Yes.
Basically, things we liked. Why am I
Things
giving...
that are honourable mentions.
Yeah, I don't...
Just what it says on the tin.
Explains what it is. I don't know why I'm... It's like I've never done a movie podcast before.
It really is.
Okay. Or none of you have ever listened to a movie podcast. All right.
So my first honourable mention is Maradona, the documentary.
Diego Maradona, the documentary, directed by Asif Kapadia, who, of course, we had on our podcast this year, which was very thrilling for us. Humble brag.
But that's not why I've picked this movie. It's not because he was on the podcast. It's because it's awesome. And I truly shocked myself by how much I enjoyed this documentary, and I think it speaks to the quality of the film that you can be watching a documentary on something that you effectively have no interest in, because I really don't have an interest in football, and be completely compelled and riveted, and at one point I was like cheering. Like, I enjoyed it so much. I think Diego Maradona was a fantastic documentary.
Yeah, I had it on my list as well, so skipping ahead.
Great.
So to add to your praise, this is 3 for 3 now of his trilogy of documentaries, which have all been fantastic. And I encourage you, if you haven't listened to our live show with Asif Kapadia at this year's Latitude Festival, go scroll back. It's about 20 episodes or so back. It was a really interesting chat, and he speaks about how these movies are a trilogy, and the sort of commonalities between Amy Winehouse and Anton Senna and Diego Maradona, and they're all very talented people who are sort of victims of their own talent or success to varying degrees.
It's fascinating. Like, they're just fascinating human stories, very well put together.
And that's exactly why you are able to connect with something when you do, and when you don't have an interest in football, which neither do I. But I think that's why you and I love sports movies, but we can't get into sports, because sports movies are just... This is essentially a sports movie, as well as being a gangster movie. Asif Kapadia describes it as his Martin Scorsese one. But sports movies are just a condensed, very digestible narrative that you often do get in sports anyway, but you have to spend a whole season building up to, and you have to put in a lot to get.
We don't put anything
back.
in, we just take.
So we never got past that barrier with sports. You have to do the initial investment and be interested, which we're just not.
No,
basically.
But anyway, go watch Diego Maradona. Brilliant movie. Was probably like my 6th of the year. Another honourable mention from me.
Oh, you're just gonna do 2 now, are you?
Oh,
it's my
you just
turn.
did Maradona.
You did Maradona, and then I said that was on my list.
Okay.
So you just like the ball's in my court.
Okay, you go.
God help us.
We've probably got the same movies anyway.
Yeah, probably. Well, here's one you... what are you doing to me? You're like gesturing me. Do you want me to move off the couch? Do you want me to just describe what you want me to do here?
I was trying to not have it on the podcast.
I mean, it's on the podcast now. This is so uncomfortable. What are you doing? Okay, you're putting your legs up. All right. Here's one that's not on your list because you haven't seen it.
Okay.
But I have. It's Dr. Sleep, the Shining sequel, the adaptation of the Stephen King's sequel to The Shining that came out in book form a couple of years ago and has now been adapted by director Mike Flanagan, who created the Netflix series Haunting of Hill House, which you and I watched last year.
Yeah, which we loved.
And was on both our top 5 TVs of the year, and which was excellent, so go watch that if you haven't. Doctor Sleep was a real surprise to me. I wasn't expecting to like this. I was expecting another cash-in sequel, nostalgia sequel, trading off our memories, and this does do a little bit of that because he plays very much in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, which is interesting because Stephen King hates that movie. Hates that Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of that. So this pulls all the iconography of that. So very familiar, all the music, so everything you love about The Shining. It made me want to go back and watch The Shining, and in fact I came home that night and it was on, coincidentally, so I watched quite a bit of it. But it's a brilliant movie. Rebecca Ferguson is the villain, and she is absolutely wonderful. There's a brilliant child central performance from an actress who I can't remember. But Mike Flanagan is just such a superb horror director because he focuses on character first and horror second, and the horror comes from you being genuinely scared for these characters.
So just like Haunting in Hill House.
Just like it. It's like the man's a genius, and I recommend anyone who missed this in the movie at the cinemas because it bombed to check it out when it comes out in video, because it's also got a brilliant performance from Ewan McGregor, who shows up in a lot of things, but he's given a lot of meat here to play with. He's the grown-up version of Danny Torrance, Jock Torrance's son, the boy from The Shining. It's wild, it's weird, it's interesting. Please watch it if you haven't.
Okay, and my honourable mention next one is one we haven't actually done an episode on, but one that I caught on demand, and it was what I've been dying to see in the cinema and just never made. It had a limited release, and it's called 8th Grade. And it's basically just a movie about a young girl who's in the 8th grade in the States, so she's like 14, I think. And it's like her last 2 weeks in middle school before she begins high school, and it's just brilliant. So it's made by a guy called Bo Burnham. I hadn't heard of him before, but he's like this huge YouTube
He's a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, YouTube comedian, like hugely successful guy. So he's, I think when I was looking him up, I said he was born around 1990, so he's relatively young. And when he made this movie, he was younger still because it was made a couple of years ago. And what this movie does is it just follows this girl in 2 weeks, this 2 week period of her life, and it doesn't do any of the tropes of a teen movie. So she's not being bullied, she's not kind of been saddled with this label of being a geek or being a cheerleader or whatever. She's just a girl who doesn't really have any friends, and
she's just a girl.
Spends way too much time on social media. And I think one of the fantastic things he managed to do, like he's a really great director, is he managed to show us someone who's on their phone a lot, which is awful to look at, right? It's not nice to look at someone on their phone and it's not interesting. He made that cinematic, which is some feat. Like there's this whole montage where she's just on a frenzy on Instagram on her phone. Absolute scrolling frenzy. And he's done it to sail away, because she's like trying to escape her life. And it's amazing. Like it's so well done. And she, like her whole online life is so fake. And the saddest part is like she has a blog and stuff like that, a video blog, and like no one even watches it. It's like she's making all these videos and like not even one person watches them. Like it's an excruciating thing to watch. But she's so great, the young actress who plays her. Like she won a couple of awards. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name. And it's just, I think if you're just really interested to see like kind of an example of what it's like to be a teenager now, like none of them are even bothered bullying anyone because they're all too busy on their phones. It's just like mad. And there's like whole scenes where she's always got her headphones in, just on her phone. Her dad's trying to talk to her. But it actually is an optimistic movie. So it's one I really enjoyed.
Okay, I have another one. I haven't seen 8th Grade, would love to. But there's one we both saw, which is on my list, which is playing in a similar field, older high school kids though, Booksmart.
Excellent, that's on my list too.
Great. So we saw this with Jarlath Regan about 25-30 episodes ago.
Yes, from the Irishman Abroad podcast. Thanks, Jarlath. He loved it. I think he loved it a little bit more than we both did, but we both really liked it.
I really, really liked it. Yeah. I would easily watch it again. It was such a fun, easy watch. Felt like a very refreshing and different high school movie.
Yeah.
Didn't play in any of the tropes that exist. No, they're not being bullied. We are essentially, if you don't know, our two characters are the studious types, the academics who, not necessarily nerds, because this film doesn't really trade in.
Yeah, this movie, like Booksmart, isn't planting people into these jocks,
like 8th grade,
nerds, geeks. Like 8th grade, yeah. So they're basically, it's a great movie, Booksmart, because it's about these two young women as they, they're about to leave high school and embark on their lives, and have that feeling that they suddenly shouldn't have spent all of high school studying. They missed out a bit. But it's amazing from Olivia Wilde as a directorial debut. She's a fantastic director. And it's one of these things that to see it is wonderful. It's very much obviously directed by a woman, I would say. And it's very female-led. And it's just a real anecdote to so much of the kind of gross out male teen comedies we've seen in the past.
Yeah,
it is a bit gross out, but from a female perspective,
it's not, and it's not a whole lot gross out.
No.
It's got some bawdy elements, but it's she does some weird surrealist stuff in here as a director. It's also got an incredible soundtrack. It's fast paced and edited well, and the two sort of central performances from Beanie Feldstein and I wrote down her name, Caitlin Denver.
yeah, they're brilliant.
They are so good together. Like, you just buy them as friends and you like them as an audience, and you're invested in them. Yeah, the movie doesn't really focus on human conflict or challenges as much as sort of just a fun night that these two have.
Yeah, but definitely recommend. And now you've talked enough about it, but Endgame does get to my honourable mentions.
Okay.
Because while it's not the movie for me to be one of my favourite movies of the year, it's certainly my favourite of all these movies, and it really surprised me how much I enjoyed by it and how much I was moved by it. And I think it's a phenomenal feat, if nothing else, for a studio, for anyone to have put together a series that's 22 movies long. How many movies in the
Something
series?
like that, yeah.
That's something else to be able to achieve that. So I think and have it coherent and engaging and moving. Yeah. So hats off to Endgame.
Okay, another one I had was something we both watched but didn't do an episode on. It was 3 Identical Strangers.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah,
that was amazing.
Really was amazing. So
I think though we watched it this year, but I don't know if it came out this year.
Oh, did it? Oh, perhaps
so you
not.
may be breaking the rules here, Dave, but we'll allow it.
I didn't check that. I think it came out early this year. I might be wrong. Anyway, I actually not going to say what this movie is about, because I think if you go into this cold, it's a real...
Yeah, like we didn't know.
It's brilliant. Yeah, it's brilliant.
And they've so much footage.
Just go watch it.
Like it's really hard for documentary makers when they don't have footage. And boy, do they have footage for 3 Identical Strangers. It's epic.
Yes, and what's really good about this movie is that it isn't just a fascinating and compelling story, but that story, as you find out, we weren't aware of, but it has been told a lot since it happened, particularly in America where it did happen. However, this documentary sort of digs deeper into A, the reasons why this thing happened, and B, what it tells us about human psychology and nature versus nurture. And to me, that's always been a very interesting topic.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And so just like the best movies, makes you think and reflect upon life itself. Cathy.
So an honourable mention from me is one Dave didn't see, but I did do a review with my sister Sarah this year. We went to see Hustlers, which was brilliant. I absolutely loved Hustlers. It's the movie that was starred J-Lo, and she was brilliant in it, and it's about these female strippers who hustle these men, and there's some dubious, unethical things going on, but just the movie was a joy to watch. It was just wonderfully put together. And I was so obsessed with J-Lo. I mean, I have always kind of liked J-Lo, don't know much about her. After this movie, I just went mad, like watching videos of her learning how to pole dance and stuff. Because she's physically unbelievable. Like, she's such a good dancer. And the pole dancing she does in this movie is something else. So you could actually watch her training for it, and it's like quite fascinating. But she's just such a good actress, and I think it's her best performance I've seen since Out of Sight. And it's just fascinating to me that someone can just have so many different facets to their talent, and it's a really funny movie as well. Like, I laughed a lot during this movie, so I really recommend Hustlers if you haven't caught it.
I want to catch it and I haven't.
Is it because J-Lo's pole dancing or because it's really funny?
Both. Right, my next one is one we both saw with the two lads from the Science-ish podcast. We did this about I don't know.
You keep trying to remember when we did this.
I can't remember any of our episode numbers. It was sometime
this year.
Scroll back and you'll see the movie High Life, which was Claire Denis, French filmmaker's latest movie, starring Robert what's his name?
Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson and Juliette Binoche. And it's the story of a near future in which convicts on death row are being sent off in spaceships for experimental reasons. In this case, they're being experimented on fertility. They're curious about whether people can have babies in space. And that's kind of nominally the plot of this. It's a really it's an art house movie, very much so. It's weird and interesting, and is really low budget, but leans into its low budget, which I really loved. It's almost like the sets are cheap. There's no like sci-fi rules. Like they step out. At one point, somebody steps out into space, and they just kind of it's clearly just like a black backdrop someone painted with some sprinkly lights, and they just step into it.
It's a truly bizarre movie. But it's one of my, I would say it's on one of my lists, and it ain't on this one.
Oh, okay, interesting. Well, it really left an impression on me. It's really interesting. It has a lot to say about
space jizz.
About space jizz. It's very sexual, this movie. Very uncomfortable movie to watch with two people who you've just met for the first time.
Yeah, I was so glad I was sitting next to Dave and not one of the lads from Science.
But actually, we had a really fun chat at the end of it. But it was really good and really interesting, and again makes you think about the nature of good and evil, and also how we treat prisoners and how our penal system can be dehumanizing, and there's certainly elements of this movie which are very dehumanizing.
Dave, you've had very different thoughts on this movie than me.
Yeah, we'll go back and listen to Cathy's thoughts.
No, but I mean, also, all the things you're saying, it made you think about. I'm like, it was such a ludicrous.
You just thought about space jizz.
I just thought it was such a ludicrous movie, so I'm glad you got something out of it.
It's not fine. Okay, let's not get into it. But I thought it was really interesting, and Robert Pattinson is just gets better and better in my eyes as an actor. Cannot wait to see him as Bruce Wayne. I think that's a great bit of casting.
I think he's going to be awful. So let's see.
Okay, moving on. Honourable mentions.
Honourable mentions is one we actually just watched last night, so it does have a recency bias. And so I know Dave's already referenced this, but Klaus is in my honourable mentions, the animation on Netflix, because I absolutely loved it. I thought it was truly wonderful. I think it's going to become a classic. I love that it was 2D animation, and I cried loads at the end. And I've already messaged my sister that her kids should watch it, which is a very high praise of a kids' movie.
Okay, well, good. You've already heard what I think. I've got one that was on your top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Marriage Story. This is on my honourable mentions, and this was like number 6. This at one stage was in my top 5, and I just couldn't decide.
Then you watched Klaus.
Yeah, actually, I think Klaus did edge this out. It's a terrific story. I'm not really going to go into it because I've already kind of talked about it, but absolutely loved it. I'm sure everyone in the world has seen it at this stage.
Well, it's on Netflix, so we know everyone watches it. And then I've only got one other honourable mention, and it's not a new movie, but we did an episode on it this year for our 150th episode. Dave and I did... we were like trying to do something special for the 150th, and we thought it would be fun if I made Dave watch a movie I've always wanted him to see. So I made Dave watch Beaches, and he made me watch Indiana Jones, which he'd always wanted me to see. And The Last Crusade. And I have to say, Beaches lives up to my expectations and memories.
Oh, great. That's the one you're going to talk about.
So I think Beaches deserves an honourable mention for being one of my best movies of the year.
What? You didn't? That's not a movie that was released this year.
It was a podcast episode that was released this year.
This is bullshit. This isn't your favourite podcast episode
that
we did this year.
Our 150th special, we watched Beaches. And let's just say I wasn't the only one crying.
Yeah, but it's hard not to cry at the end of Beaches. Come on.
Unless you're some sort of monster.
I know, and I cry so easily in movies. It was an open goal for this movie.
But that's it. I'm done with my honourable mentions. Dave, have you any left?
Yeah, I'll rattle off a few. Us, the Jordan Peele movie, which we both saw, which I'm surprised is not on your honourable mentions.
Well, you might be on another list.
Oh, hello. We saw this earlier in the year, so this is about 40 episodes back.
Stop trying to guess episodes.
I should have written down which ones it was.
You really shouldn't have.
And I think we were slightly disappointed coming out of it, and I think in retrospect what happened is I got very bogged down in the sort of logistical details of how Us works and what's presented in it, and it still doesn't make sense to me, or doesn't hold up in that regard. So you freaked me out just. But this movie's really stuck with me, and when I was going back over all the movies we saw this year, that just was like a beacon. As in, I really appreciate that. Well, I love what Jordan Peele does and how he makes movies, but I love that he, like Get Out, is trying to say something about America and class divide, and is constructing thoughtful horror movies with interesting, weird premises that we haven't seen before, that you can just then pick apart for weeks. And I'm still trying to think about it. And
this should have been on your second chance list then.
It is on my second chance list. Spoiler alert.
Oh, okay.
Can we not have things on double lists?
Well, apparently we can.
Well, okay. So let's I'll just skip ahead to my second chance. It actually is on my second chance list because I feel like I didn't give it I think we gave it a pretty positive review, but we were a little bit disappointed coming out.
Well, it's a controversial one because in our submissions this year from various contributors, we've had one telling us was their worst movie of the year and one telling us it was their best movie of the year.
Yeah, and I can see why. So I've managed to move past the sort of literal trappings of the movie, which are a little troublesome, and looking back, I think it is one of the better / best films of the year, and I just cannot wait for more from Jordan Peele.
And it has the visuals of this movie are very striking, like they do haunt you afterwards.
Yeah, and just the voice that you just did. Now we laughed at the time when it happened, and it is a little silly, but it's a bold decision, and it's weird and interesting. And Lupita Nyong'o is scary AF in that thing.
Yeah, she's amazing in this.
So it's something I want to watch again. I have a desire to watch it again.
One of our listeners and avid tweeters, Daniel Bennyworth Gray, messaged us that him and his wife watched it for the second time, but they'd heard our review and then they said we'd ruined that for them.
Yeah, no, you had. Your untethered voice. All right, I've got two left, which I'll rattle through. John Wick Chapter 3 is on my honourable mentions. It's plot-wise easily the weakest of the John Wick movies. It's all over the place. It also doesn't doesn't have any conviction with the setup that it has at the end of John Wick Chapter 2, which is disappointing. Pretty much undoes that Rise of Skywalker style very quickly. But these are just some of the best action movies that I've ever seen. The choreography in these movies is incredible. I want you to watch it so much because I just want to share this kind of thing. I caught some of it again recently on Sky Cinema, and I just skipped right to the scenes. In particular, there's a knife fight, which is probably the best action scene I've seen in cinema this year. So you're saying you should skip to the action
scenes in this movie, but action scenes are my least favourite scenes in movies. So this doesn't sound like the movie for me.
Yeah, this is true. But I'd love to you just at least watch this knife fight and be like, how did they do that? It's incredible. And Keanu Reeves...
Just play it and I'll say, how did they do that? That's incredible.
You're so annoying. Also, this is the year of Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is incredible. He had John Wick Chapter 3. He had that an incredible cameo in that Netflix rom-com.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
What else did he do? He did some amazing things. Oh, he showed up. He basically stole the E3 games show by showing up on stage randomly for the Cyberpunk 2077 game, which he's now in and is like the cover star of. He's just such an awesome dude, and he's loving life, and I love Keanu.
And have you got any more honorable mentions?
Last one is How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. Again, like John Wick Chapter 3, This is plot-wise probably the weakest of the How to Train Your Dragon movies, but in terms of visuals, like most animation, it's improved so much now that, and I saw this in 3D and it was just gorgeous, stunning, in fact. And the emotional way that they close out this entire trilogy, and they close it out very satisfactorily, just absolutely devastated me. I was in pools of tears, and I love this. I love the series, and I love the music, and I love the characters, and I love the relationship between Toothless and the character who I can't remember is the main character.
The lead character.
Yeah.
Wow, well done.
What's his name?
It's really your favourite trilogy of all
anyway,
time.
Love it. Okay.
Okay, great. And now we're on to second chances, which is movies where we were either too positive or too negative at the time, and in retrospect, we've slightly changed our minds a bit.
Yeah.
So I've only got 2.
Again, another lengthy description of something that can be summed up in 2 words.
It's both positive and negative. And last year, my second chance was I admitted that I had given a poor review to Greatest Showman because I had said the songs weren't good, and then it proceeded to sing them for the next 10 months. So yeah, the songs were really good.
And then the movie itself went on to be one of the biggest phenomenons in the world.
But it was definitely one that, like, on first viewing, I didn't think much of, and I've watched it again and loved it.
I still want to see that.
It's great.
Still haven't.
Second chance review, minor negative this year. Firstly, The Lion King. I think I was a little bit too positive after I'd watched it, and I was positive for a reason. The songs are wonderful. It looks beautiful. Of course, it's a lovely story, but it left me feeling really cold the next day and subsequent days when I was thinking about it, and people were asking me if I would recommend it, and I thought, you know what? It's the whole endeavour is so soulless that even though the movie, of course, was really well done, because it was Jon Favreau, wasn't it? Like, yeah. It's a great movie, but it leaves me cold and it leaves me slightly uncomfortable that they're doing. I really disagree with Disney's strategy now of just remaking stuff, and it's not even live action. So it's like, do you know what? It's one thing to turn Cinderella into a live action film. It's another thing somewhere in the middle to have Jungle Book with a real life boy, but this is just CGI and it's just completely unnecessary. And after we'd watched it, we literally came home that night and started watching the original Lion King, and that was so wonderful. Like, within half an hour of seeing the new one, I just thought, oh god, no, I wish we'd watched the original first before the review, because I think we would have been more critical about it.
I agree. It's less than the original, so kind of like, what's the point?
Yeah.
I've already talked about Us. That was on my list, and I would like to give that a retroactively more positive viewpoint.
We'll take the positivity from The Lion King and throw it into Us.
Sure. One that I was quite favourable about at the time, but now looking back, I think was pretty weak, is Captain Marvel.
I thought about that. I didn't actually put that on my list, but it was one of my considerations.
Yeah, I
think we were more favourable because we were excited that it was Brie Larson and Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, and look, and I'm not saying, this isn't me saying that's now I think it's a bad movie in retrospect. I don't think it's a bad movie, but I think it has left me, as you said, cold. I haven't thought about that. I had forgotten that movie existed until I was doing this and looked back.
Well, I actually watched a bit of it recently. I watched the first half hour because it was on, and I watched it, and I was like, oh yeah, actually. Even as I was watching it, I was a bit underwhelmed.
It's underwhelming. Yeah. It's very average.
Yeah. And it did. I mean, it took Marvel too long to get a female lead. For me, they've kind of blown that. Like with what's coming out next year? Black
Widow. Yeah.
Like, I think she always should have had her own movie, but 23 movies into seeing her, do I need to see one? Probably not.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons Captain Marvel would have been on was, actually I should have just put it on this list. I had it on and I deleted off it, so I'm glad you have it. And no spoilers for Avengers Endgame, but there was no payoff from Captain Marvel, and I thought that Captain Marvel was a build-up of an amazing character, and turned out it was just a flash in the pan.
Yeah, I was about to say the exact same thing. I think for a studio, we're not going to talk any more about Endgame because we've done that to death. But we praised them as a studio for getting to that point and having this very clear, coherent vision. But from the way that Infinity War ended with that stinger, teasing Captain Marvel, and then all the anticipation of the Captain Marvel movie leading up to up to Endgame, and then how she plays a part in Endgame was very disappointing.
Very weak.
And it actually makes the film itself feel inferior in retrospect, particularly from a quality point of view.
Because what's the point?
So like, what's the point? So really, I think it was, in looking back, a failure.
Yeah, they should have done it after Endgame, firstly. Or they should have done it 15 movies ago. It was in the wrong place.
They built her up too much and then didn't have the payoff. But I think partly there's production complications there, because apparently they filmed her scenes in Endgame before they'd filmed the movie Captain Marvel.
I mean, that's just terrible.
It's backwards.
And now we are on to...
No, I've got one more.
Oh.
Joker, I think I gave a kind of I had a confused reaction coming out of Joker, but was it mostly quite positive. And I still do think it's a very well put together movie that Todd Phillips did. It's very accomplished, and obviously Joaquin Phoenix does an incredible performance in that. But it's something that made me, I felt a little bit ill coming out of it.
Well, this is why it was on my bad list. It's not on my second chance review.
And this is me saying I don't think it's bad, but I would like to downgrade my sort of the sort of, I think I was generally positive about it, and in the weeks after it, it didn't sit well with me, and I just like, it's a nasty little movie.
And people who, well, it's not a little movie, it's a very big.
Sorry, yes,
movie.
It's the biggest R-rated movie of all time now.
Yeah, like people were asking me, after the fact, would you recommend it? And I had to say, frankly, no, I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
I couldn't recommend it to people because of how bad you feel leaving it. Okay, so are we done now with second chances? We're on to most surprising.
Yes. What do you got?
So we've talked about it loads, so I'm barely going to mention it, but High Life truly shocked me. It's the most shocking movie of the year for me. It was just so not anything I've ever fathomed watching, and it was truly bizarre. So I recommend, if you haven't seen High Life, watch it, because it's quite something. It's a very odd movie. And yeah, what about you? What's the surprising one?
One a pleasant surprise I had this year was seeing Toy Story 4.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that, because I felt like I was a bit done with Toy Story.
Yes, I went with Sam Clements, who you'll hear on this podcast from the 90 Minutes or Less Film Festival podcast. I was done with Toy Story as well. I think we were all done. I think everyone going into this was like, what are you doing, guys?
You
had a perfect trilogy that had a lovely ending.
That's unlike Disney to start a new trilogy when they've ended one well. Yeah.
But you know what? They absolutely killed it on this. It's a really good movie. It was fun. Oh, that's another thing Keanu Reeves was in. He's had an amazing year.
Just in everything now.
And he was Duke Kaboom, like really fun character. Loads of fun new characters. Really sinister villains. Great plot. Another great ending. And this is very much an ending on an ending. But they pay off Woody. This is very much Woody's movie. It's just good storytelling and really fun, really funny. Like, I laughed out loud several times and just had an absolute blast. So really surprised me. Okay,
awesome. And then I had, as another surprising one, Rise of Skywalker, because it really surprised me how much I enjoyed it. I was genuinely not expecting anything from it. I wasn't expecting to hate it or love it. I was expecting to just sit there kindly while you watched it, and I would just eat loads of food. Yeah. And ended up being really engaged by it. I won't go into it because we had a massive discussion on it. So yeah, Rise of Skywalker is on my most surprising.
I'll tell you right now, Rise of Skywalker does not appear on any of my lists.
Shade.
Because it neither surprised me.
Not on most disappointing.
No. Well, it didn't disappoint me. It did exactly what I thought it was going to do.
It didn't disappoint you. You cried for 2 hours when we got home.
I did not cry. I didn't cry at all. That was part of the problem. It didn't disappoint me. You can't be disappointed when you have no hopes or expectations. That's not how it works. I was so let down by the Last Jedi. Disappointed me massively.
Oh, did it?
That was all the disappointment was saved for them.
I'm like waving a day for do not talk about the Last Jedi. You've said your piece.
We've spoken enough about this, and we've had some really fun and interesting conversations.
Oh my god, we've never had so many emails than we had about Rise of Skywalker, guys.
So thank you everyone, and I've really enjoyed the chit chat, and particularly those of you who have blatantly disagreed with me and agreed with Cathy. I think I've had the most fun talking to you guys.
Well,
and that's what movies are about. It's about the discourse.
But most people agreed with Dave, though, has to be said. But Tim Gowan sent an email that had the subject matter, The Rise of Cathy. And that's the best email I've ever received. So thank you, Tim.
This is really Cathy's origin story as a Star Wars fan, because you're a Star Wars fan now.
I mean, I'm not.
And your favourite one is Rise of Skywalker.
I've already forgotten it. We only watched it a few days ago.
Of course you've already forgotten it, because it's empty calories. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, and I had one more that really surprised me this year.
Yeah.
And it was Shazam.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I know it's a little bit forgettable, but it was
I think they're making another one, of course.
Oh, of course. But this is coming from it's in the DC universe that gave us pretty much a load of shite, except Wonder Woman. Which was wonderful. But Shazam was fun. Shazam was just like a lovely little sidestep into a silly version of Big with superheroes.
It really was.
And a lot of fun with it. And would watch more of, I think.
Okay, well, good, because I think there's one coming. And I just had one more most surprising, which was Terminator Dark Fate. I thought it was going to be dreadful, and actually I think it was really decent. And I feel it's a shame that it suffered at the box office, but it's their own fault because they released so many bad ones in the meantime. So if they had just released this as the third Terminator film, I think it would have done really well for them. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed watching Linda Hamilton and Arnold Schwarzenegger on the Graham Norton show afterwards, because they're like best mates. And I love everything they did with Arnold in this, and I really enjoyed the setting.
So what you're saying is they should have released this movie 15 years ago.
No, they should have not done any of the movies. Imagine if they'd just done Terminator 2 then come back with this. Yeah. Like, everyone would have been obsessed with it, because it is a good, it's not a perfect movie, but it's good.
It's far from a perfect movie.
But it should not have done as badly in the box. Like, it's the worst performing Terminator, but it's by no means the worst Terminator.
Oh no, not at all. This is
that was
the third best one. Okay, right, that's all our surprises. What about disappointments? What do you got?
Disappointment. My first one is actually possibly the first movie we watched this year, Bird Box.
Oh yeah,
it looked awesome.
Which was on my worst of the year. Yeah,
it looked awesome. We were really excited for it, and then it just came and went, and didn't live up to any sort of promise.
Yeah, well, I've said my piece on Bird Box. I think possibly my biggest disappointment of the year, easily, is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Big fan of Tarantino's films historically. And this to me was a really missed opportunity, a big letdown, film which I was expecting to really like, but I wasn't expecting to really dislike. Like, I really, really didn't like this movie.
Well, that's why it's on my bad list, not most disappointing, because I went in feeling a little bit unsure of it in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, go listen to our very divisive review about that.
Yeah.
Divisive.
Thanks to everyone who trolled us after that review. It's our first true experience of trolling, and it was quite something.
Yeah, Tarantino fans can be nasty, man.
Yeah. And then my most disappointing was, after Bird Box, was Us. And I agree with everything you said. There's loads and loads of positive things about Us. So this is not me saying Us is a bad film. I just, in my heart, was disappointed because I loved Get Out so much. And I know that's actually, it's like that second album syndrome. It's when your hopes are too high for something, you can kind of set yourself up to be disappointed. And I love Jordan Peele. I'll watch anything he makes, but I was a little bit gutted by this one.
Although, hats off for him on his second album to not do the first album again.
Oh no,
right?
And I admire everything about it. I love the premise. I loved visually how it was. I love the cast. It just all fell apart a little bit for me, and I was a bit gutted by it.
Yeah. I've got one more on my disappointment list, and it's Spider-Man Far From Home.
Oh, you were really sad about that one.
I was quite disappointed. I
forgot about
that
movie.
And
that's on my movies I forgot I saw this year list.
Again, it's really not a bad movie. It's actually a very good, solid movie, and did some really interesting, surprising things at the end in particular. And then everything that followed in the aftermath of this movie, with Spider-Man leaving Sony leaving the MCU, then coming back, all that was just almost more fascinating than what happened in the movie. But it just felt like a little bit of a bum note to come after the high of Endgame to come back to the MCU
Yeah.
with this, and also
That's why they should have come back with Captain Marvel.
yeah, that kind of would have made more sense in a way, I guess. It's just Spider-Man's my favourite Marvel.
You love him too much and too
character.
deeply.
And I really loved Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and I loved Homecoming. But I felt like besides the fun Jake Gyllenhaal performance as Mysterio, and there's a lot of fun to be had in this movie, it just felt too slight, and a lot of it didn't work for me. But anyway, we've kind of gone into...
We did a big review on it.
We've done a big review on that.
But it's an interesting one for you to bring up, because as I said, I had forgotten about it and I wasn't particularly a fan of it when I saw it. But I know lots of people loved it, and we did get lots of listener feedback of people telling us they really loved it, which I was happy about, because, we want people to love movies.
Yes, and I'm also open to... I will watch that again at some stage, and we'll go in with an open mind, and I'm open to...
Yeah, just lower your expectations.
Yeah, I think possibly my expectations were too high going in.
And finally, guilty pleasures.
All right, I've only got one. How many you got?
I've got one too. I wonder if it's the same one.
All right, on 3. 3, 2, 1.
Angel
Murder
Has
mystery.
Fallen.
Oh God. Angel Has Fallen.
That was such a guilty pleasure. We had so much fun at that movie. Come on.
No, you and Nick, who we saw it with about 15 episodes ago.
Hi, Nick.
Hi, Nick. You guys had fun. I'm
calling it a guilty pleasure. Like, I'm not saying it's the best movie I saw this year.
No, sorry, I'm not.
Just give me Jared Butler in an
I'm not
action.
telling you you're wrong for your opinion in the movie. I'm just saying you guys had fun. I didn't really. I found it plodding and predictable, and
yeah, that's the part of the guilty pleasure. Like, give me Jared Butler and give me an action movie, and I'm sold. And apparently,
I'm sorry. It wasn't even like pleasurable in a guilty way. I didn't find it pleasurable at all. I found it really boring.
Well, you're in the minority because apparently they've commissioned loads more of them.
Yeah, it's insanely successful. Yeah.
So fine, me and Nick will go without you next time. You're just jealous we went to Geostorm without you years ago and you've never...
That's the one I want. I reckon that's a guilty pleasure. I'd rather have watched that. Anyway, my one is Murder Mystery, which was something I didn't really want to watch. We thought we'd just throw it on because it was on Netflix. And Adam Sandler doesn't have a good track record when it comes to Netflix movies. And Jennifer Aniston's not really a sign of quality either.
You are throwing serious shade
She's
here.
not. She's not. Good actress, but not doesn't make interesting or
probably because there's
good
no
casting
good
choices.
roles for women over the age of 40 in Hollywood.
I'm not saying it's her fault, but I'm saying that her track record of movies doesn't inspire. She's not like, the new Jennifer Aniston movie is out. Oh, this will be a fucking runaway hit.
Well, millions of women in the world would disagree with you.
Oh, fine. Yeah. But anyway, look, I'm trying to be positive here.
Okay.
Murder Mystery was really fun.
It was really fun.
By no means is it good. There's 100 better comedies that I've seen this year alone.
We had loads of fun with it.
But it was fun. It was just such an easy distraction.
The problem for me after, when we've talked enough about Knives Out in our top 5, but the problem for me is I loved Murder Mystery in the year, right? Because I love murder mysteries. But then I see Knives Out at the end of the year and it's
Oh no, these are leagues apart.
Yeah.
No, this isn't.
That being said, Murder Mystery did all the tropes very well. Honestly, it was done really well.
Yeah. And that's it. That's it for me.
Okay.
Right. So now you're gonna hear some more of the best and worst movies of some of our favourite guests that we've had on the podcast this year.
Hey everyone, Linda here, Cathy's mom. A year where I didn't see very many movies. So what I will say, I loved the musical biopics. I did love Freddie Mercury. I did love Elton John. I just loved them for nostalgia, for emotion, for entertainment. Another movie I really liked was Hustlers. I know I don't like the theme of abuse, but the performances were amazing, the production was amazing, and they did pack a punch. And lastly, what I didn't like was The Lion King. I'm sorry I saw it. It kind of ruined something for me. I would have left the animation as it was, simple and original. So if there was talent, I think it was wasted, and I think they should have created something new and not messed with The Lion King. Anyway, Happy New Year. Bye.
Sam from the 90 Minutes or Less Film Fest here. My favourite film of 2019 has to be Shinichiro Ueda's One Cut of the Dead. Sadly, 96 minutes long. Too long for our podcast, but I'm glad to be able to talk about it on here. It's basically a zombie film unlike any zombie film you've ever seen before. And for my worsties of 2019, I've got 2 contenders. The Hellboy reboot. Ugh, just like, ugh, so bad. Didn't help that I saw this with a bit of a hangover either, but a terrible film. Avoid. And then yesterday, Richard Curtis, Danny Boyle, the Beatles back catalogue, an incredible cast, all wasted. God knows what's going on in this film. It's such a hokey concept, and really, Ed Sheeran should not be acting on screen. Not one for me. Avoid.
Hey, Cathy and Dave, this is Kobi from Flixwatcher podcast, also known as a podcast where we review films on Netflix as chosen by people such as yourselves. Okay, favourite film this year, I'm going to stay on brand and pick a film that's only available on Netflix, and that is called Knock Down the House. And this is a documentary about the grassroots movement fronted by people such as Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, I think that's how you say her name, otherwise known as AOC, at AOC on Twitter. And it follows the grassroots movements of female wannabe politicians in the US as they take down the incumbent Democratic Party, who are kind of made up of old, fusty-foisty, straight white men who are little better than Republicans, to be honest with you. My worst film of this year, I think, is actually going to be a film that I really did enjoy in the cinema, and that's going to be Last Christmas. And I knew going into it that it was going to be rubbish. It was rubbish, but I enjoyed it.
Right, we're back, and we're going to tell you now about some of the things that we didn't get to see. You're going to, if you want to hear about a married couple talk about movies they haven't seen, this is the section for you.
Things that we should have seen this year that we didn't, so we're sorry because we're not been able to talk about them, and then things that we're most excited for 2020.
And it's also hard. We know you guys tweet us all the time. Particularly one listener, Wayne Outram, loves. So hello, Wayne. Loves to tweet us and tell us about the cinema trips he goes to every week, and all it does, Wayne, is just make us jealous. So you get to go see so many more movies than we do. But then
it's all relative, because people say to me, I can't believe that you do a weekly movie podcast. Like, how do you see that many movies?
We do go to at least a movie a week.
We never go as, like, when we were young and footloose and fancy free, we were going to the cinema like 4 times a week. Yeah. We ain't doing that now.
We used to be footloose and fancy free.
We used to. Apparently. Okay, so I'll just rattle mine off and then you rattle yours off, right?
Yeah,
in terms of ones we missed. So For Sama, No Excuse, the documentary in Syria.
Yeah, it's right there on our TV.
It's on our planner because Channel 4 showed it and we recorded it. But
well, somebody told me we shouldn't watch that while you're pregnant.
Well, that's why I haven't watched it. Yeah. So it sounds incredible. It's this couple and they shot it in Syria, and she's pregnant and they had a child there, and I am desperate to see it, but I just, there's certain things I won't watch when I'm pregnant. That's one of them. If Beale Street Could Talk, I really wanted to see and miss.
Oh yeah, I missed that one.
Sorry We Missed You, the Ken Loach movie, came and went too quickly for us and wasn't in any of our local cinemas. So I actually tried to buy it to watch it before this episode, because I know it would have been in my top 5, but it's not even for sale yet, so I couldn't. And Cats, which we still haven't seen because I went to Star Wars.
I can't wait to go to Cats.
So I cannot wait to see Cats, but haven't seen it. Hasn't made this list. Dave,
I'm pretty sure that would have made one of these
It would have made something. And what are your ones?
I'll rattle off a load. The Irishman, we still haven't managed to sit down and tackle.
And at this point, I don't think I'll ever be the one to watch it with you.
No, come on. I'm pretty sure everyone wants to hear your opinion of The Irishman.
I don't think so.
Parasite is on everyone's top 10 of the year, but I don't think it's even out in the cinemas.
No, so
yet,
people who've seen it in the States have it as their top list.
So looking forward to that one in 2020. Uncut Gems, the Adam Sandler one, is supposed to be amazing.
Really?
Atlantics is supposed to... Why are you questioning?
I'm joking.
Oh, Adam Sandler makes some amazing movies.
I know he does. He's just so wildly varied between good and... He's either in a brilliant movie or a terrible movie.
Yeah, this is true. A bit like Jennifer Aniston. Atlantics is supposed to be good. Won't You Be My Neighbour, the documentary about Mr. Rogers, the kids' TV host.
Yeah.
We never had Mr. Rogers growing up, but this looks like just a beautiful story. And they've made a
movie with Tom Hanks.
Yeah, Tom Hanks version of this as well, which I'm less interested in. I'd rather see the documentary.
Same.
The Favourite, I didn't get to see. Still haven't seen. It's supposed to be amazing.
I forgot about The Favourite.
Would that have made any of your list now in retrospect?
No, I really enjoyed it. It's probably just middle of my movies for the year, so it doesn't make lists. Really.
Okay, Little Women I really want to see. The Lighthouse, which I think it hasn't come out here in the UK
that looks
yet.
awesome, yeah.
But looks amazing. Robert Pattinson, Arpats for the win. For Sama.
When did you get such a crush on Arpats?
I just love Arpats.
Is it from the Twilight days?
I never actually saw any of those movies.
Well, maybe that's why I think he's such a bad actor and you think he's such a good actor. So you need to go and watch a Twilight and come back to me, okay?
Okay. Maybe we'll do that over on the Patreon. if we get all right, here we go. If we get 500 patrons over on Patreon, that'll be the new stretch goal. I'll watch all the Twilight movies.
I don't know because I won't watch them with you.
Fine, I'll watch them. I'll do a Twilight movie marathon. That's a promise. That's the Dave guarantee. The Souvenir is supposed to be incredible. It did come out here, but we didn't get to see it. And The Lighthouse, I've written it twice.
You really want to see it?
I want to see it so much, I've written it twice. And that's it for me.
And then things coming up in 2020 that we want to watch. The one I'm most excited for is a thriller called Promising Young Women.
That's the, what's her name thing? Yeah, it looks great.
Wow, Dave, that's really helpful. It's actually been made by the Killing Eve Season 2 showrunner, who's called Emerald Fennell, and it stars Carey Mulligan.
Emerald Fennell?
Emerald Fennell. Yeah.
Wow.
So it sounds awesome, and it's a thriller which I absolutely love. Like, I love female-led thrillers. It's probably one of my more niche genres that I love.
Carey Mulligan's great as well.
Carey Mulligan's great. And then it's an interesting thing looking at what's coming out in 2020, because obviously when you look these things up, you see the big ones, but God, it's a repetitive year of movies. It really is.
I wanted to talk about this. I wrote down 3. These aren't the ones I'm looking forward to, but these are just 3 indications of this continuing trend of mining our childhood, in particular the 80s. Ghostbusters sequel, Top Gun sequel.
Top Gun's on my list. I cannot wait for Top Gun.
Yeah, but I don't like Top Gun anyway. Bill and Ted Face the Music. Like, it's just like all these movies from the 80s coming back, and how many of them have been satisfying? Can you name me? There's very few. In fact, the only thing from the 80s which has come back and moved the story on while also reflecting the themes of its original text and being a sequel and being something new and being awesome is the Watchmen TV series by Damon Lindelof.
Which we'll talk about a lot over in our TV end.
Which is just, that's how you do a sequel to a long dormant property.
Yeah.
Star Wars.
But coming up in 2020, the other movies I'm excited about, I'm most excited about Promising Young Women, but Wonder Woman 1984.
Yes.
I know we're mining things here, but I think it's going to be awesome because I love the last Wonder Woman.
That's not mining an old thing. I know, but that's something which has been around for decades and is a sequel to a movie that only came out 2 or 3 years ago.
I know. I'm
that's
just saying,
fine.
it's not original. Top Gun, I can't wait for it. I thought the trailer looked amazing. The Woman in the Window is a book that I read and really enjoyed, so I can't wait to see the movie for that. It's going to be a Hitchcockian movie. It's inspired by Rear Window. I don't know who's in it, sorry. And then, surprising myself, because I'm really not a fan, we've never reviewed one on this podcast because I don't think one's been released since we did it, but the Daniel Craig James Bond movies, I am a fan. Find them really dry and dull, but it's on my looking forward to list now. Because No Time to Die, the trailer looked awesome. Like, it looked more fun, and my main issue with them has always been that they're just like as dull as dishwater. So, and after Daniel Craig's turn in Knives Out, I'm a bigger Daniel Craig fan than I've ever been before. Spectre,
I'm not even joking, it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, because it was terrible.
Was that the last one?
I wanted to walk out.
I don't remember.
We saw it in East London. In that lovely little cinema.
And like the last half hour is them just in the reeds, walking around in a load of bushes and reeds.
I'm sorry, what?
Is that the end of the movie? Is Javier Bardem in it?
What are you talking about?
Is Javier Bardem in it?
Are you thinking of Gladiator?
No, is Javier Bardem in it?
That's Skyfall.
Right, okay, fine.
How do you have such a capacity for forgetting movies?
That's why I do a podcast where I
tiniest little movie
review a movie immediately after.
Oh, so to get it down on record. So this podcast is the record of your memory.
No, because I'd have forgotten the movie otherwise. Anyway, so I am genuinely looking forward to No Time to Die. What are you looking forward to?
Wonder Woman 1984, top of my list. I think really excited for that. And interestingly, I don't have any Marvel movies here. I have a DC
Marvel,
movie top.
we've done with Marvel.
Yeah, we've got the Eternals.
Like Endgame happened. It would be awesome if they just stopped after Endgame.
Or take a break. Yeah. So there's two that I can think of coming out this year. Black Widow and The Eternals, the one with Angelina Jolie and Kumail Nanjiani. And I'm not. And look, I hope those movies are good, and I will go, and I hope to enjoy them. But I'm not excited about them. I'm not particularly pumped.
I just feel like Endgame was too epic. Like, I really think if they'd taken, only 12 months off after Endgame, we would have rebuilt our excitement levels again.
Yeah, it's just hard to get excited now because it's just going to keep going.
Yeah.
But Wonder Woman just looks fun, and again, it's set in the 80s, and 80s is hot right now. But whatever, I'm okay with that. Tenet, the new Christopher Nolan movie. I don't know anything about this. I avoided the trailer because that man does weird and interesting things. I'm hoping for some Inception level, next level weirdness. Don't know anything about it. I'm very excited. The Invisible Man with Elizabeth Moss looks really interesting. I did watch the trailer for that. Mulan, although I wrote Milan on this, so the biopic about AC Milan. Look, we talked about The Lion King earlier and this endless parade of pointless Disney remakes.
But at least this is actually a live action remake. That's the difference. It's different from The Lion King.
Total difference.
Yeah.
It actually is people. But Jesus, man, the trailer for this was awesome.
Yeah,
it looks
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah, it looks really good.
So I'm really excited for that. But actually, the thing I'm most excited for next year is the new version of Dune by Denis Villeneuve.
He did Arrival, right?
He did Arrival and Blade Runner 2049 and is my favourite science fiction director working today. And that's an awesome book. I read it about 10 years ago and loved it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a huge fan of the David Lynch thing. I think he did some really interesting things, but he's very limited by the technology of the time. Mm-hmm. To get the technology we have nowadays with a director like Denis Villeneuve, with source material like that, I'm really, really excited for Dune.
That should be good. I didn't know that was happening. I read Dune as well, I think after you read it, and I really liked it. So I'd be excited to see the movie.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this.
Ooh, cool.
Also, for the third time on my list, The Lighthouse. I wrote this down a lot.
You were dying to see The Lighthouse.
And then lastly, the new Pixar movie, Soul.
Oh, that looks good.
Looks really nice.
Yeah.
And it's by Pete Docter, who did Up and Inside Out. So he's one of the best Pixar directors.
He's one of the more emotional ones.
Yes, yeah. He's a really good director.
I mean, the opening, we've probably said this before in the podcast, but for me, the best scene of any sequence of any movie I've ever seen is the opening montage of Up. Like, it gets me if I just hear the music, I'll cry. Like, and it shows up a lot on playlists and stuff. If you're listening to like instrumental film scores and things like that.
Michael Giacchino.
It's a wonderful, wonderful scene.
All right, that's it.
So now
we're done.
We're done. Thank you everyone for listening.
What a year!
What a year! And we have some really special listeners who subscribe over on our Patreon to us. That's patreon.com/Cinemile.
The Cinemile.
And they're like, we love our patrons. They contribute so much. Every month we have such great discussions with them. So we asked them to send us in their best and worst of the year. So we've got a couple of clips of listeners, some wildly disagreeing with each other, which is quite fun. So we're going to play those now. Thank you, guys.
Yes, and thanks everyone for listening again this year. It's been an incredible year.
Yeah, we're delighted.
We love doing this podcast. We love talking to you all.
Yeah.
And we'll see you all in the new year for
Happy New Year.
Movies. Happy New Year.
Bye.
Hi, Cathy, Dave and the esteemed cinema listeners. My name's Gary from London. Earlier this year, I went to see Midsummer at the cinema. I don't like knowing anything about films in advance, so I went in blind, and whilst it isn't technically the best film I've seen this year, it was definitely my best cinema experience. Just brilliantly shocking, absolutely bonkers. Florence Pugh's acting was fantastic, as were most of theirs. So yeah, that's mine. Thank you. Have a great Christmas.
Hi Dave and Cathy, it's Steve Potter here. My favourite films of the year are a joint winner of Wild Rose and A Marriage Story, and my worst films of 2019 are the awful Midsummer and equally bad Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Have a great Christmas, guys. Thanks. See ya.
Hi everyone, my name's Kate. I'm calling from Wisconsin in the US. My best movie of 2019 was Midsommar. I can't really say much more than the episode already covered, but it was just so intense but so bright, and so shocking but so calm at the same. It just blew my mind. That movie is just incredible. And my worst movie of 2019 was Scariest Stories to Tell in the Dark. It wasn't bad. I just expected a lot more from Andre Overdahl and Guillermo del Toro. I thought it was going to be a lot darker. The creatures would be scarier. I grew up with those books, and they kind of are in my memory as pretty disturbing. So the movie kind of didn't meet my expectations, and I kind of didn't realize it was a coming-of-age movie, too, which is not always my bag. So anyway, it wasn't bad. It was just not what I wanted it to be. So thanks for the podcast. Bye.
Hi, Dave and Cathy. This is Conrad. I live in Maine, although right now I'm in a cabin in Vermont. My favorite movie that I saw this year was Booksmart, which was clever and energetic and totally unexpected. I thought it was amazing, and Knives Out was a close second, but I really loved Booksmart a lot. Thank you.
Hey Cathy and Dave, this is Jonny Keys here. My favourite film of the year was a tie between the incredible documentary Emmanuel about the mass shootings here in Charleston, South Carolina a few years ago, and about the amazing story of the victims who chose to forgive the killer, Dylan Roof. It's also tied with the Peanut Butter Falcon, the wonderful story with Shia LaBeouf and newcomer Zach Gozagan, I think his name is. The worst film of the year was Serenity with Anne Hathaway and Matthew McConaughey. Absolute trash.
Hi Dave, hi Cathy, Jack Naven here. Long time listener, first time voice memo sending thing, whatever this is. Favourite film of the year was Us. I absolutely adored it. I've seen it 4 times this year. Not on the cinema, a couple on Blu-ray. Jordan Peele, he's not just a comic genius, but he's a master of the horror genre. I'm going to watch anything that man ever does. In terms of the worst film, I'm sure it wasn't actually the worst, but most disappointing was definitely Rise of Skywalker. Not to be that guy, but just the way I feel. So there we are.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
I'm Jessie Cruikshank, and I've always been told I have a face for podcasting. So I launched a podcast. It's called Phone a Friend because each week I'll break down the biggest stories in pop culture. But when I have questions, I get to phone a friend. I'll phone a royal watcher to find out why Prince Harry is acting like a real housewife. I'll phone a tween to please explain Euphoria. And maybe I'll even phone a Backstreet Boy to find out if I still have a chance. I don't? Okay. New episodes drop every Thursday wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.